Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the powerful and passionate speech of my honourable friend from Ilford North. Can I start by paying tribute to the dedication and professionalism of police officers and staff in my constituency and across Merseyside, and also to thank our Chief Constable Andy Cook and our excellent Police and Crime Commissioner Jane Kennedy for their leadership through what is a very, very challenging period. Since 2011, Merseyside Police has been asked to make sizable cuts to its budget. The force had already slashed £82 million from its annual budget and is expecting to be in a position to have to make a further £18 million in cuts by 2021. Last year, our Chief Constable warned that Merseyside Police was reaching breaking point as budgets are stretched to the limits, and he issued a stark warning that further cuts to our police budget could result in some offences not being responded to at all. Merseyside has lost 1,700 police officers and staff since 2010, and at the same time, the Fire and Rescue Service in Merseyside has had its budget cut in half by the government, and Liverpool City Council has faced some of the most savage funding cuts of any local authority. Merseyside Police Federation tell me that the decreasing number of officers has led to an increase in single crewing, where officers are forced to attend call-outs on their own. 3/4 of officers, they tell me, are often or always single-crewed. This is having a pretty obvious and significant impact in certain categories of crime, the ability of the police to respond, for example, in breaking up gangs or arresting people in large groups. The combination of budget cuts and rising crime have serious implications in my constituency. In just 6 months last year, Liverpool had already had more gun-related violence than in the whole of the previous year. Last weekend, locally in my constituency, armed gangs broke into 3 separate properties, threatening residents with a shotgun, a machete and a hammer. And shootings have increased, with 9 gun-related murders across Merseyside since 2014. Now, Merseyside Police has long been recognised around the country as one of the very best police forces in tackling gun crime, but they are saying that they are stretched to the limit. And my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, rightly quoted our Chief Constable on this issue at Prime Minister's questions today. I want to speak briefly about an issue on which my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister, has really led, and that is the scourge of scrambler bikes in many of our constituencies. It's one that affects my constituency and indeed affects others across Merseyside, and I've been working with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the local force to try to tackle this problem. I welcome what the Minister said about it in terms of the Home Office review, and I was pleased before Christmas to support the honourable gentleman, the member for North West Norfolk's 10-minute rule bill, which sought to give greater legal protections to emergency service workers, including police officers who pursue people on scrambler bikes. I'm pleased to report that yesterday Merseyside Police crushed 300 of these scrambler bikes which they had confiscated or had been stolen. However, what they tell me and what Jane Kennedy tells me is they need both the resources and the powers to do more to tackle this appalling scourge. I want to finish by addressing what I think is a fundamental issue of social justice, and I apologise that in some ways I'm repeating points that colleagues have made. Merseyside Police relies on central government to provide 81% of its funding, raising just 19% through the council tax. And that is a major part of the reason why police forces in poorer areas like Merseyside have been hit the hardest by cuts in funding. We have some of the most deprived communities in the country. That brings particular challenges for policing, but also means it's harder to raise the extra money through the precept locally. Like other colleagues, I'm going to make the contrast with Surrey, because it is such a stark contrast. Surrey has faced similar cuts to Merseyside in terms of its central government grant. But last year, Surrey Police Force was the only force in the country which actually raised more money locally than it received from the government. And because they have a more affluent council tax base, they lose less funding, even though they probably face far fewer complex crimes than we do on Merseyside. There is an inherent unfairness about this. It's a fundamental issue affecting areas with high levels of deprivation. And that brings me really to this question of the Merseyside Police Precept and the announcement that the Minister made in December that will enable Jane Kennedy, our Police and Crime Commissioner, to raise additional funding through council tax, not additional money from central government, additional money from Merseyside council tax payers. Now, Jane has been consulting on this. I expect an announcement soon on her consultation. I should make clear that I support her proposed increase in the council tax, but for my constituents, I will give way. I don't want my colleagues
on that point, but would he also agree with me? Like, for example, the police crime commissioner in Durham, she's got no choice but to
Absolutely. My honourable friend anticipates my point. She has no choice. And of course, similar challenges are facing the local authority. So for my constituents, if this increase goes ahead, it won't just be the 2% for the police, it'll be the 4% for the local authority as well. There'll be a 6% increase in council tax, and this is no criticism of either the Police and Crime Commissioner or the local authority. It's the only way in which they can get the money that they need for policing, for social care and for other crucial local services. And my final point on this is to say £12 on Band D raises more in some parts of the country than others. It's really the point my honourable friend from Durham raised earlier on. This ability to raise more locally is itself regressive. It compounds the existing inequality that I described. Merseyside Police has had to make huge cuts already. Undoubtedly, as the Chief Constable has told us, this affects operational capability. I implore the Minister to work with Jane Kennedy and with our Chief Constable to address this fundamental issue of social justice, because I know that my constituents worry about crime and antisocial behaviour, especially when we see, very sadly, the return of significant levels of gun violence across Merseyside. There really is a desperate need for additional resources for Merseyside, so I finish by echoing my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister, and urge the Minister to think again.